Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. This is volume 1 of the collected teachings of Ajahn Sumedho. There's 5 volumes in the whole collection, and just chose a few teachings, mostly from the earlier years of his say Dhamma teaching career. And this first one is called Buddha Dhamma Sangha. When people ask, what do you have to do to become a Buddhist? We say that we take refuge in Buddha Dhamma Sangha, and to take refuge we recite a formula in the Pali language. Buddhang saranang gacchami, I go to the Buddha for refuge. Dhammang saranang gacchami, I go to the Dhamma for refuge. Sanghang saranang gacchami, I go to the Sangha for refuge. As we practice more and more and begin to realize the profundity of the Buddhist teachings, it becomes a real joy to take these refuges. And even just reciting them inspires the mind. After many years as a monk, I still like to chant Buddhang Saranang Gacchami. In fact, I like it more than I did at first, because then it didn't really mean anything to me. I just chanted it because I had to, because it was part of the tradition. Merely taking refuge verbally in the Buddha doesn't mean you take refuge in anything. A parrot could be trained to say Buddhang Saranang Gacchami, and it would probably be as meaningful to a parrot as it is to many Buddhists. These words are for reflection, for looking at them and actually investigating what they mean. What refuge means, what Buddha means. When we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, what do we mean by that? How can we use that so it's not just a repetition of nonsense syllables, but something that really helps to remind us, gives us direction, and increases our devotion, our dedication to the path of the Buddha? The word Buddha is a lovely word. It means the one who knows. And the first refuge is in Buddha as the personification of wisdom. Unpersonified wisdom remains too abstract for us. We can't conceive a bodiless, soulless wisdom. So, as wisdom always seems to have a personal quality to it, using Buddha as its symbol is very useful. We can use the word Buddha to refer to Gautama, the founder of what is now known as Buddhism, the historical sage who attained parinibbana in India 2,500 years ago, the teacher of the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, teachings from which we still benefit today. But when we take refuge in the Buddha, that doesn't mean we take refuge in some historical prophet. We take refuge in that which is wise in the universe, in our minds. That which is not separate from us, but is more real than anything we can conceive with the mind or experience through the senses. Without any Buddha wisdom in the universe, life for any length of time would be totally impossible. It is the Buddha wisdom that protects. We call it Buddha wisdom. Other people can call it other things if they want. These are just words. We happen to use the words of our tradition. We don't argue about Pali words, Sanskrit words, Hebrew, Greek, Latin, English, or any other words. We just use the term Buddha wisdom as a conventional symbol to help remind us to be wise, to be alert, to be awake. Many forest bhikkhus in Thailand use the word Buddho as their meditation object. They first calm the mind by following the inhalations and exhalations using the syllables Buddho, and then begin to contemplate. What is Buddho, the one who knows? What is the knowing? When I used to travel around in northeast Thailand on Tudong, I liked to go and stay at the monastery of Ajahn Phan. Ajahn Phan was a much loved and deeply respected monk, the teacher of the royal family, and he was so popular that he was constantly receiving guests. I would sit by his kuti and hear him give the most amazing Dhamma talks, all on the subject of Buddho. As far as I could see, it was all that he taught. He could make it into a really profound meditation, whether for an illiterate farmer or an elegant Western-educated Thai aristocrat. The main part of his teaching was not just about mechanically repeating Buddho, but about reflecting and investigating, awakening the mind to really look into the Buddho, the one who knows, to really investigate its beginning, its end, above and below, so that one's whole attention was stuck to it. When one did that, Buddho became something that echoed through the mind. One would investigate it, look at it, examine it, before it was said and after it was said. And eventually one would start listening to it and hear beyond the sound until one heard the silence. A refuge is a place of safety. And so when superstitious people came to my teacher Ajahn Chah, wanting charmed medallions or little talismans to protect them from bullets or knives or ghosts and so on, he would say, "Why do you want things like that? The only real protection is taking refuge in the Buddha. Taking refuge in the Buddha is enough." But their faith in Buddha usually wasn't quite as strong as their faith in those silly little medallions. They wanted something made out of bronze and clay, stamped and blessed. That is what is called taking refuge in bronze and clay, taking refuge in superstition, taking refuge in that which is truly unsafe and cannot really help us. Today in modern Britain we find that generally people are more sophisticated. They don't take refuge in magic charms, they take refuge in things like their bank. But that is still taking refuge in something that offers no safety. Taking refuge in the Buddha, in wisdom, means that we have a place of safety. When there's wisdom, when we act wisely and live wisely, we are truly safe. The conditions around us might change. We can't guarantee what will happen to the material standard of living or that our bank will survive the decade. The future remains unknown and mysterious. But in the present, by taking refuge in the Buddha, we have the presence of mind now to reflect on and learn from life as we live it. Wisdom doesn't mean having a lot of knowledge about the world. We don't have to go to university and collect information about the world in order to be wise. Wisdom means knowing the nature of conditions as we experience them. Not just being caught up in, reacting to and absorbing into the conditions of our bodies and minds out of the habit of fear, worry, doubt, greed and so on. It is using Buddho, the one who knows, to observe that these conditions are changing. It is the knowing of that change that we call Buddha, and in which we take refuge. We make no claims that the Buddha is me or mine. We don't say, "I am the Buddha," but rather, "I take refuge in the Buddha." This is a way of humbly submitting to that wisdom, being aware, being awake. Although in one sense taking refuge is something we do all the time, the Pali formula we use as a reminder, because we forget. We habitually take refuge in worry, doubt, fear, anger, greed and so on. The Buddha image is also a reminder. When we bow to it, we don't imagine that it is anything other than an image, a symbol. It's a reflection which makes us a little more aware of Buddha, of our refuge in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. The Buddha image sits in great dignity and calm, not in a trance, but fully alert, with a look of wakefulness and kindness, not caught in the changing conditions around it. The image is made of metal, while we have flesh and blood bodies, which make things much more difficult for us, but still it is a reminder. Some people become very puritanical about Buddha images, but here in the West I haven't found them to be a danger. The real idols we believe in and worship, and that constantly delude us, are our thoughts, views and opinions, our loves and hates, our self-conceit and pride. So the second teaching I'd like to read from is called Realizing the Mind. And I must confess, I transcribed this many, many years ago. Back in the old days, Lumpur Sumedho was very resistant to ever being recorded. So if you brought a tape recorder into the shrine room, there would be a certain aramana would arise. But occasionally he would submit and say, "Lumpur, somebody's asked to record the Dhamma talk tonight. Would that be okay?" And on this occasion, there was a lay woman who'd come from Liverpool, I believe, and she was just about to return home after having stayed at Chithurst, and she begged for the opportunity to record Lumpur's talk. And so I asked him, and he agreed. And then this was the talk that was given that evening, and so I was so inspired and impressed by it that I transcribed it, and it's here in this collection. So this is called Realizing the Mind. When giving talks on meditation, one really says the same things over and over, but it's necessary to do so because we keep forgetting over and over and have to keep being reminded. Remember, what we remember, we forget. If you have nothing to remember, you have nothing to forget. In meditation, we are moving towards where there is nothing to remember and nothing to forget, which doesn't mean nothing, but a centering, a realization of ultimate reality, of that which is not conditioned. Realization is not gaining. You don't gain realization. You realize something which you have all the time, but never notice. Meditation is not a gaining process either. We're not here to make ourselves into Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Arahants, or anything else, or to try to condition our minds into being Buddhist. You might think you have to have a religious brainwash to throw away all your Christian habits and simply train yourself to think like a Buddhist. Wear the robe, try to look like a Buddha image, use all those Pali words and call yourself Buddhists. That's just another costume, another act, another role to play. So the purpose of our meditation is not to become Buddhists either. Realization is what? Think, the word real. Realizing, recognizing, knowing, direct knowledge of ultimate truth. What do we mean by ultimate truth? We can say ultimate truth. We can use the Pali word Dhamma or the Sanskrit word Dharma. We can say the Absolute. We can say God. Whatever word one happens to be conditioned with is the word one prefers. Ultimate truth might sound a bit intellectual or not have the pull on the heartstrings that God has, but we don't quibble about terminology anymore. We don't care exactly what word we use. We don't try to find the perfect word to describe something which doesn't need any description, which cannot really be described, but can only be realized. We just do the best we can with whatever language we happen to have, because the point is not to decide which terminology is the most accurate, but to go beyond the term to the actual realization of ultimate reality, or God, the Absolute, or whatever. On the level of religious symbolism and convention, we can quibble about the Buddhist view, the Buddhist Dhamma, the Christian God, and be caught up in all kinds of interesting little differences and comparisons. For what? For something one hasn't realized yet, like the blind men describing the elephant. It's not the perfect word or the most accurate description that we need, but the intention to reach the reality. That one-pointed intention, that sincerity, that kind of earnestness that takes you to the realization of truth, Dhamma. So, if it's already here and now, you don't have to go around looking for it. There are all these nice stories about religious pilgrims, religious seekers going off to the Himalayas, looking for some saint living in a cave, or some mystic, some hermit, some arahant who lives in some remote valley or on a mountain crag and knows the truth. We must find that person because he is our teacher and he's going to give us that truth. We have romantic visions of ourselves suddenly meeting our teacher. We climb up some remote Himalayan mountain crag, breathing hard, the air getting thinner, and he's standing there with eyes bright, radiant with love, saying, "At last, you've come." On that fictional level, we can create interesting visions and fairy tales about religious seeking, but the real journey is an inward one. So, how do we go inward? Journey inside ourselves. We start looking for something, the ultimate reality, as something we're going to find by looking within. So we think meditation is the way. I don't need to go to India, that's foolish rubbish. Don't need to go to the Himalayan mountains. I can just meditate and find the truth within myself. And that's a very good idea. But what is the truth, and what are you looking for? Is the truth something? Does it have a quality that we should be able to recognize? The religious journey is what we call inclining to Nibbana, turning away, inclining away from the sensory world to the unconditioned. So it's a very subtle kind of journey. It's not something you can do as an act of will. You can't just say, I'm going to realize the truth, or I'm going to get rid of all my defilements and hindrances, get rid of lust, hatred, all my weaknesses, and actually do it. People who practice like that usually go crazy. A man I met years ago in a mental hospital had been a bhikkhu. This man had been a maha, meaning he had taken all the Pali examinations. He went off to a mountaintop, went into his little hut and said, "I'm not coming out until I'm perfectly enlightened." And he came out stark raving mad. If the journey is just an act of will and ego, of course, it takes you to madness. You just keep bashing away, knocking about in your mind. With the ego, you're just caught in a trap. It seems a web of madness, hard to see beyond, or ever extricate yourself from. So meditation isn't something that we do to attain or achieve or get rid of anything, but to realize. So what can we realize right now? You may think, well, I've been looking for the ultimate reality the whole time I've been sitting here, and I can't find it. What can you realize or know now, whatever your state of mind is? Whether you're agitated, having bad thoughts, angry, upset, bored, frightened, doubtful, uncertain, or whatever. You can recognize that this is what is going on now. That's a realization that now that there is this condition of fear, doubt, worry, some kind of desire, and that it is a changing thing. If you're frightened of something, try to hold on to that fear and make it stay to become a permanent condition of your mind. See how long you can stay frightened. See if fear is the ultimate reality, is God. Is fear God, the ultimate truth? You can see fear. When I'm frightened, I know it. There's fear, but also, when I truly realize there's fear, its power to delude me diminishes. Fear only has power if I keep giving it power. And one last one for today. And this is called happiness, unhappiness, and nibbana. When we no longer identify with the sense world as me or mine and see it as anatta, we can enjoy the senses without seeking sense contact or depending on it. We no longer expect conditions to be anything other than what they are, so that when they change, we can patiently and peacefully bear the unpleasant side of existence. We can humbly endure sickness, pain, cold, hunger, failures and criticisms. If we're not attached to the world, we can adapt to change, whatever that change may be, whether it's for the better or the worse. If we're still attached, we can't adapt very well. We're always struggling, resisting, trying to control and manipulate everything, and then feeling frustrated, frightened or depressed at what a delusive, frightening place the world is. If you've never really contemplated the world, never taken the time to understand and know it, it becomes a frightening place for you. It becomes like a jungle. You don't know what's behind the next tree or bush or cliff, a wild animal, a ferocious man-eating tiger, a terrible dragon, or a poisonous snake. Nibbana means getting away from the jungle. When we incline towards nibbana, we move towards peace of mind. Although the conditions of mind may not be peaceful at all, the mind itself is a peaceful place. Here we make a distinction between the mind and the conditions of mind. The conditions of mind can be happy, miserable, elated, depressed, loving or hating, worrying or fear-ridden, doubting or bored. They come and go in the mind, but the mind itself, like the space in this room, stays just as it is. To concentrate on the space in the room, we have to withdraw our attention from the things in it. If we concentrate on the things in it, we become happy or unhappy. We say, "Look at that beautiful Buddha image." Or if we see something we find ugly, we say, "Ugh, what a terrible, disgusting thing." We can spend our time looking at the people in the room, thinking whether we like this person or dislike that person. We can form opinions about people being this way or that way. Remember what they did in the past, speculate about what they'll do in the future, seeing others as possible sources of pain or gratification to ourselves. However, if we withdraw our attention, that doesn't mean that we have to push everyone else outside of the room. If we don't concentrate or absorb into any of the conditions, we have a perspective, because the space in the room has no quality to depress or elate. It can contain us all. All conditions can come and go within it. Moving inwards, we can apply this to the mind. The mind is like space. There's room in it for everything. or nothing. It doesn't really matter whether it's filled or has nothing in it, because we always have a perspective once we know the space of the mind. It's emptiness. Armies can come into the mind and leave, butterflies, rain clouds, or nothing. All things can come and go through it without our being caught in blind reaction, struggling resistance, control, or manipulation. So when we abide in the emptiness of our minds, we move away, not getting rid of things, but no longer absorbing into conditions that exist in the present, or creating any new ones. This is our practice of letting go. We let go of our identification with conditions by seeing that they're all impermanent and not self. This is what is meant by vipassana meditation. It's really looking, witnessing, listening, observing that whatever comes must go. Whether it's coarse or refined, good or bad, whatever comes and goes is not what we are. We're not good, we're not bad. We're not male or female, beautiful or ugly. These are changing conditions in nature. They are not self. This is the Buddhist way to enlightenment, going towards nibbana, inclining towards the spaciousness or emptiness of mind rather than being born and caught up in the conditions of the mind. You may ask, if I'm not the conditions of mind, if I'm not a man or a woman, this or that, then what am I? Do you want me to tell you who you are? Would you believe me if I did? What would you think if I started asking you who I am? It's like trying to see your own eyes. You can't know yourself because you are yourself. You can only know what is not yourself. And that solves the problem, doesn't it? You know what is not yourself. There's no question about what you are. If I said, who am I? I'm trying to find myself, and started looking under the shrine, under the carpet, under the curtain, you'd think, Venerable Sumedho has really flipped out. He's gone crazy. He's looking for himself. I'm looking for me. Where am I? Is the most stupid question in the world. The problem is not who we are, but our belief and identification with what we are not. That's where the suffering is. That's where we feel misery and depression and despair. It's our identifying with everything that is not ourselves that is dukkha. When you identify with that which is unsatisfactory, it's obvious that you'll be dissatisfied and discontented. So, the path of the Buddhist is letting go rather than trying to find anything. The problem is blind attachment, blind identification with the appearance of the sensory world. You needn't get rid of the sensory world, but learn from it, watch it. No longer allow yourselves to be deluded by it. Keep penetrating it with Buddha wisdom. Keep using this Buddha wisdom so that you become more at ease with being wise, rather than making yourself become wise. Just by listening, observing, being awake, being aware, the wisdom will become clear. You'll be using wisdom with regard to your body, thoughts, feelings, memories, emotions, all of those things. You'll see and witness them, allow them to pass by, and let them go. So, at this time, you have nothing to do except be wise from one moment to the next. Annamayang dhammagata sadhukarang dadamase sadhu 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 anumodami. Thank you very much. Oh, today Dana is dedicated to Luang Sumedho, very appropriate, on his birthday, with the dedication, may the future years bring him good health and contentment, and may all his aspirations be fulfilled in this very life. Dana is also offered in memory of dearly departed relatives. May they find eternal peace, especially Sudhu, who passed away 7 days ago. I'm not sure the people who are making the offering, there's no name there. Also, Dana is being offered today in memory of late Mrs. Beatrice Wichaya Singha, who would have celebrated her 91st birthday, with the dedication, Dear Ami, may you attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. That's from all children and relatives. And lastly, this is from Ranga, Gimhani, Ryan and Rihanna. Dear Ajahn Amaro, I hope you are doing well. I've sent some donations for the temple via a courier service for the Remembrance Day of our late grandmother, Mrs. T.G.B. Paris. I would be grateful if you could do the Anumodana for her to attain Nibbana. May the Triple Gem bless you. So we will dedicate our blessings for Luang Sumedho and all those good people today. Yatha variva pura paripurindi sagarang evamewa hitodinang petanang upakapati ichitang patitang tumang kipamewa samichatu sabe parentu sankappa chando pannaraso yata manicho dhiraso yata Sabaroko vina satu mate bhavatuan tarayo sukiri kayuko bhava abhivadanassilisa nichang vadapachayino chataro dhamma vadandi ayuvano sukhang balang yang kinchi vedang itawa urangwa sage suwayang ratanang banitang nanno samang atitata katena hida pibode ratanang banitang etena sajena sawa tiho tukayang viragang amatang banidang yanda jag Sakyamuni samahito natena dhammena samadhikinchi dhambi dhamme ratanang vanitang etena sa jena soa tehotu yamboda seto bhariwa nai suching samadhimanan tarikan yamahu samadhina tena samo navi jati dhambi dhamme ratanang vanitang ete nasajena soa tihotu ye puggala tasatang basada cha tariye tani yuga nihondi teda kinaya sugata sasavaka hete sudinna nimaha palani ida pisange ratanang banitang etena sa jena sawati hotu yesu payota manasa dalena nikamino gotama sasanamite patipata hamata vigaya lada muda Bunjamana idam bisange ratanang vanitang etena sajena soa tihotu kinang puranang nawang nati sambhavang viratajit yatike pavasming dekina vichaha viruli chanda nibandhi dhira yatayam badipo vidha pisange ratanang vanitange tena sajena soa tihotu bhavatu sabha mangalang rakandu bandevata sabha buddha nubhavena sada soti bhavandu te bhavatu sabha mangalang rakandu bandevata sabha dhamma nubhavena sada soti bhavandu te bhavatu sabha mangalang rakandu bandevata sabha sanganu bhavena sada soti bhavandu te. Oh, today is a day to particularly not just be listening to Luang Por's teachings in the morning, but be bringing him to mind and cultivating a sense of gratitude. None of this would be here, none of us, I think without exception, none of us would be here were it not for him and his teachings and his unrelenting dedication to the practice of Dhamma. So sadhu anumodana to Luang Por Sumedho for all of the great blessings we've received, and it's good to be, bringing that to mind and to cultivating that sense of appreciation and rejoicing that we have these opportunities in our life because of his great dedication and commitment and his great heart.